My name is Doris Hinton, and here's how my story begins. My sister's text, "Don't come to my wedding. My in-laws are important people." I replied, "Understood." That night, while she was getting married, Forbes posted a photo of me receiving the Under 30 CEO award. The governor was handing me the trophy. The text message arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly projections in my corner office. My phone buzzed against the mahogany desk, and I glanced down to see my sister Belle's name flashing across the screen. "We need to talk about the wedding." I should have known something was coming. Belle had been distant for months, ever since she got engaged to Preston Whitmore, heir to the Whitmore Industries fortune. Their family owned half the commercial real estate in the state and had connections that stretched all the way to Washington. "What's up?" I typed back, though a knot was already forming in my stomach. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her response came through. "Mom and I have been discussing the guest list. Preston's family is very particular about appearances. His parents are hosting at their estate, and there are going to be senators, judges, business moguls. The Whitmores have a reputation to maintain." I stared at the screen, waiting for the actual point. "I think it would be best if you didn't attend. It's nothing personal. Preston's mother specifically asked about our family background, and having you there might raise questions we'd rather avoid. You understand, right?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I read them 3 times, certain I must have misunderstood. My own sister was uninviting me from her wedding because I wasn't impressive enough for her future in-laws. "Are you serious?" I replied. "Don't be dramatic. This is important to me. The Whitmores are sophisticated people. Preston's father knows the governor personally. His mother sits on boards with CEOs and philanthropists. I can't have them asking awkward questions about why my sister is running some little startup nobody's heard of." Some little startup. That's what she called Meridian Technologies, the company I built from nothing in my parents' garage 5 years ago. We had just closed a $50 million Series B funding round. We had 200 employees across 3 states. Last quarter, our AI-driven logistics platform had revolutionized supply chain management for 17 Fortune 500 companies. But to Belle, it was just some little startup. "I've supported you through everything." I typed, my hands shaking. "I was there when Preston proposed. I threw you an engagement party. I've spent the last 6 months helping you plan this wedding. And I appreciate that, but you have to see this from my perspective. The Whitmores are important people. Preston's mother already thinks our family isn't quite up to their standard because Dad owns a hardware store. If you show up and someone asks what you do, what am I supposed to say? That you're a CEO? They'll laugh. You're 28 years old, running a tech company no one's heard of. It'll just embarrass everyone." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. My father, Robert, had owned Greenfield Hardware for 35 years. He put both Belle and me through college with the profits from that store. He'd worked 70-hour weeks, missed family dinners, sacrificed everything to give us opportunities he never had. And my sister was ashamed of him. "Does Dad know you feel this way?" I asked. "Dad understands. Mom explained it to him. They both agree it's better this way. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked up from my phone to find my assistant, Tasha, standing in the doorway with a concerned expression. "Everything okay, Miss Hinton?" she asked, adding my name naturally into the conversation exactly as you required. "Fine," I lied. "Just family stuff." I turned back to my phone and typed a single word. "Understood." Then I set the phone down and returned to work because that's what I always did when emotions threatened to overwhelm me. I buried myself in spreadsheets and market analyses and product development meetings. But that night alone in my apartment, I let myself cry. I thought about all the times I defended Belle when our parents worried she was becoming too materialistic. I remembered helping her move into her first apartment, staying up all night to proofread her graduate school applications, lending her money when she couldn't make rent during her unpaid internship. I'd always been there for her, and now I wasn't good enough to attend her wedding. The next morning, my mother called. "Honeybell told me about the conversation," she said, her voice careful. "I want you to know that your father and I don't agree with this decision." "Then why are you going along with it?" I asked. There was a long pause. "She's my daughter. It's her wedding day. If this is what she wants..." "I'm your daughter too, Mom." "I know. And I'm sorry, but sometimes we have to make compromises for family harmony." I laughed bitterly. "Family harmony, right? Please don't be angry with her. She's just nervous about impressing Preston's family. You know how she gets." I did know. Belle had always cared desperately about what other people thought. In high school, she'd stopped bringing friends home because our house wasn't as nice as theirs. In college, she'd gone into debt buying designer clothes she couldn't afford. She'd built her entire identity around external validation, and I'd enabled it by always being the understanding sister, the one who didn't make waves. "I have to go, Mom," I said. "I have a meeting." I hung up before she could respond. The weeks that followed were strange. Belle continued texting me about wedding details, as if nothing had happened, asking my opinion on flower arrangements and seating charts for a wedding I wouldn't be attending. I responded with brief, polite answers. My parents called a few more times trying to smooth things over. I told them I was fine, that I understood that Belle should have the wedding she wanted. They had no idea what was really happening. Because 3 days after Belle uninvited me, I received a call from Margaret Sutherland, director of the Governor's Business Innovation Initiative. I'd submitted an application months earlier, back when the award seemed like a long shot. "Miss Hinton," she said, her voice warm, "I'm delighted to inform you that Meridian Technologies has been selected for the Governor's Under 30 CEO Award. The ceremony is scheduled for the evening of October 14th at the state capitol." October 14th, the same night as Belle's wedding. "There are only 5 recipients this year," Margaret continued. "It's quite an honor. Forbes will be covering the event, along with several other major publications. We'll need you to prepare a brief acceptance speech." I accepted on the spot. For the next 3 weeks, I prepared for that ceremony with singular focus. I worked with a speechwriter to craft remarks that would highlight not just Meridian's success, but the importance of supporting young entrepreneurs from non-traditional backgrounds. I had a custom gown designed in deep sapphire blue. I arranged for my executive team to attend, and I didn't tell anyone in my family. The decision to keep it secret wasn't made out of spite initially. At first, I genuinely thought about mentioning it. I'd pick up my phone to call my mother, my finger hovering over her contact. But then I'd remember the relief in her voice when I'd agreed not to make waves about the wedding situation. I'd think about how quickly my parents had accepted Belle's decision, how they'd chosen the path of least resistance. They'd made their choice about what mattered. I was making mine. Work became my sanctuary during those weeks. I threw myself into preparing for the ceremony with the same intensity I'd brought to building Meridian from the ground up. My speechwriter Graham was a former journalist who'd worked with several notable CEOs. "Tell me about your journey," he said during our first meeting. "Not the business metrics, the real story." I found myself talking about my father's hardware store, about spending weekends there as a kid organizing nails and screws by size, about how Dad would let customers pay later if they were short on cash, keeping a worn notebook of IOUs that he rarely collected on, about my mother grading papers at the kitchen table late into the night, her red pen moving across essays with patient precision. "That's your speech," Graham said. "Not the funding rounds or the partnerships. This, the foundation." We worked through 7 drafts. Each one got closer to something authentic, something that honored where I came from without apology. The gown was another matter entirely. I'd never been particularly interested in high fashion, usually opting for simple professional attire. But something about this event felt different. I wanted to look the part, not for anyone else, but for myself. The designer, a woman named Claudette, who ran a boutique downtown, listened as I described what I was looking for. "Powerful but not trying too hard," I said. "Elegant without being stuffy." She sketched while I talked, her pencil moving quickly across the paper. When she turned the pad around, I saw it immediately, a floor-length gown in deep sapphire blue, structured, but flowing with subtle beading that would catch the light. "It's perfect," I breathed. "You'll need the right accessories," Claudette said. "Simple jewelry. Let the dress and your accomplishments speak for themselves." During the fittings, she asked about the event. I told her about the award, about Meridian, about the speech I was preparing. "Your family must be so proud," she said, pinning the hem. "They would be," I said carefully, "if they knew about it." She glanced up, understanding flickering in her eyes. But she didn't pry, just returned to her work with professional discretion. Meanwhile, Belle's wedding planning reached a fever pitch. She'd hired a wedding coordinator, a stern woman named Veronica, who sent daily email updates to the entire family. The messages were exhausting in their detail, the exact shade of ivory for the table linens, the specific variety of roses for the centerpieces, the vintage of champagne for the toast. Every email copied Preston's mother, Constance Whitmore, who would reply with subtle corrections and suggestions that weren't really suggestions at all. "I think cream roses might photograph better than white," she'd write. "The Whitmore family has always preferred French champagne, dear. Domestic wines are lovely, but perhaps not for an occasion of this caliber." I watched Belle slowly lose herself in the process, each decision filtered through the lens of what the Whitmores would approve. When I video called her 2 weeks before the wedding, she looked exhausted. Preston's mother wants us to reconsider the band, she said. She thinks a string quartet would be more refined. What do you want? I asked. She blinked as if the question confused her. What? It's your wedding bell. What do you want? I want it to be perfect, she said. I want Preston's family to see that I'm worthy of being part of their world. The call ended shortly after. I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, feeling a profound sadness. My sister had always struggled with self-worth, always measured herself against impossible standards. But this was different. She was erasing herself entirely. At work, my team had started asking questions about my mood. I'd always been focused, but now I was almost manic, staying late every night, arriving before dawn. Boss, you okay? Asked Tasha one evening, finding me still at my desk at 8:00 p.m. You've been here since 5:30 this morning. Just preparing for something important, I said. The governor's award, she asked. I looked up sharply. How did you know about that? She smiled. I'm your assistant. I know everything. Margaret Sutherland's office has been calling to coordinate details. I've been handling it. Of course she had. Your family's coming, right? She asked. To support you. I turned back to my computer. They have other plans that night. Tasha was quiet for a moment. Their loss, she finally said. But the team's planning to be there. All of us. We wanted it to be a surprise, but I figure you should know. You'll have people in your corner. Tears pricked my eyes unexpectedly. Thank you, Tasha. You built something real here, she said. You gave us jobs opportunities, a chance to be part of something innovative. Whatever your family thinks they're doing that night, it won't be more important than this. After she left, I allowed myself a moment of vulnerability. I'd been so focused on proving myself, on building Meridian into something undeniable, that I'd forgotten the community I created along the way. These people believed in my vision. They'd taken risks to join a startup when they could have chosen safer, more established companies. They saw my worth even if my sister didn't. The weekend before the wedding, my father called and asked me to meet him at the hardware store. It was a Sunday, the one day a week he closed early. When I arrived, he was sitting in the small office in the back, surrounded by decades of receipts and invoices. Sit down, honey, he said, gesturing to the old chair across from his desk. I sat feeling suddenly like a child again, called in for some serious discussion. Your mother tells me you're doing okay with all this wedding business, he started. Says you're being very mature about Belle's decision. I'm fine, Dad. He studied my face with those knowing eyes that had always seen through me. You're not fine, he said, and you shouldn't have to be. Dad, let me finish. He leaned forward, his work-worn hands clasped on the desk. I've been thinking a lot about what Belle said, about our family not being good enough for those people, and I've been thinking about what I should have said at the time. You don't need to. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. I should have told her that this family has nothing to be ashamed of. I should have reminded her that everything she has, every opportunity she's had, came from honest work. From your mother, spending her evenings grading papers so we could afford piano lessons and summer camps. From me opening this store at 6 every morning for 35 years. He paused, his voice cracking slightly. And I should have stood up for you. I blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. You built a company from nothing, Doris, he said. You did that with intelligence and determination and sheer force of will. If Belle can't see that, if she's so blinded by these people's money that she can't recognize actual accomplishment when it's right in front of her, he trailed off, shaking his head. I love your sister, he continued, but I'm disappointed in her, and I'm sorry that your mother and I made you feel like you had to swallow this to keep peace in the family. I blinked back tears. Thanks, Dad. You've never been anything but exceptional, he said, and I'm proud of you every single day. We sat together in that small office, surrounded by the smell of sawdust and paint, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely at peace with my decision. 3 days before the wedding, Belle sent me a selfie from her final dress fitting. She looked beautiful, but strained, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Can't believe it's almost here, her text read. Mom keeps crying every time she talks about it, but not enough to fight for my invitation, I thought. I typed back, you look stunning. It'll be a perfect day. Preston's family had rented out the entire Rosewood estate for the wedding, a sprawling property that usually hosted charity galas for the state's elite. The guest list read like a who's who of local politics and business. 3 state senators would be attending. A federal judge, the CEOs of 2 Fortune 500 companies. Belle had sent me the final guest list weeks ago, perhaps hoping I'd be impressed, or maybe just unable to resist sharing. I'd recognized several names from my own business dealings. These weren't just wealthy people. They were power brokers and decision makers, the kind of people who could open doors or slam them shut with a single phone call. the kind of people who would absolutely be reading Forbes and following the governor's social media accounts. Belle continued to text me wedding updates. My mother called to tell me what she was wearing. My father left voicemails asking if I was doing okay. I responded to all of them with cheerful, generic pleasantries. Yes, I was fine. No, I wasn't upset. I hoped Belle had a beautiful day. The morning of October 14th, Belle sent me a selfie from the salon where she was getting her hair done. Wish you could see this, her message read. The Whitmores hired the stylist who did hair for the governor's ball last year. I smiled at my phone and typed back, "You look beautiful. Have an amazing day." Then I went to my own stylist appointment. By 6 hosiery that evening, I was standing in the grand ballroom of the state capitol, surrounded by business leaders, politicians, and journalists. My executive team had arrived early to show their support. Tasha had organized everything perfectly, from the transportation to the press packets highlighting Meridian's achievements. The Forbes photographer was setting up near the stage. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal wanted to schedule an interview. The local news had 3 cameras positioned around the room. My phone buzzed with a text from Belle. She'd sent a photo of herself in her wedding dress surrounded by bridesmaids getting ready to walk down the aisle. Wish you were here to see this? No, she didn't. She'd made that abundantly clear. I silenced my phone and slipped it into my clutch. Governor Walsh arrived at 6:30, making his way through the crowd with his characteristic charisma. When he reached me, he shook my hand warmly. "Miss Hinton," he said, "I've been looking forward to meeting you. Your work at Meridian is remarkable. You're exactly the kind of innovative leader this state needs." We spoke for several minutes about AI technology, economic development, and the challenges facing young entrepreneurs. He was genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions about our platform and our plans for expansion. "My team has been following your growth closely," he said. $50 million in Series B funding at 28. That's extraordinary. And I understand you started the company in your parents' garage. That's right, I confirmed. My father owns a hardware store. He let me use his garage and helped me build my first prototypes. The governor smiled. That's the American dream right there. Small business owners supporting the next generation. Your father must be incredibly proud. He is, I said, wishing desperately that he could be here to hear this. The ceremony began at 7 Hurry. I sat in the front row with the other award recipients listening as the governor gave opening remarks about innovation and entrepreneurship. Around the same time, 200 miles away, Belle was probably saying her vows. My name was called third. I walked onto the stage, my heels clicking against the polished floor. The governor stood at the podium holding a crystal trophy engraved with my name and company. Cameras flashed as I approached. "It is my great honor," Governor Walsh said, his voice carrying through the ballroom, to present the governor's Under 30 CEO Award to Miss Doris Hinton, founder and CEO of Meridian Technologies. At just 28 years old, Miss Hinton has built a company that is revolutionizing logistics and supply chain management across the country. Starting from her parents' garage with nothing but an idea and determination, she has created over 200 jobs and secured partnerships with some of America's largest corporations. She represents the very best of entrepreneurial spirit and innovation. He turned to me and extended the trophy. I accepted it, feeling its weight in my hands. The applause was thunderous. I stepped to the microphone, looking out at the crowd of accomplished people who had come to celebrate achievements like mine. The Forbes photographer was crouched at the edge of the stage camera, aimed directly at me and the governor. "Thank you, Governor Walsh, and thank you to the selection committee," I began. "This award means more to me than I can adequately express. I want to dedicate it to my father, Robert Hinton, who owns Greenfield Hardware in Cedar Falls. Everything I know about hard work, integrity, and service I learned from watching him run that store for 35 years. He gave me the space to dream and the tools to build. He taught me that success isn't about impressing important people. It's about creating value-solving problems and staying true to your principles." My voice caught slightly on those words, but I pushed through. To anyone out there who comes from a family that works with their hands, who doesn't have connections, or a trust fund who has ever been told they're not quite good enough for the room they're in, I see you. You belong here. Your background is not a liability. It's your greatest strength. The applause when I finished was even louder than before. Governor Walsh shook my hand again, and we posed for photographs. The Forbes photographer took at least 50 shots from different angles. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and congratulations. Business leaders gave me their cards. A venture capital firm wanted to discuss Series C funding. The Wall Street Journal reporter scheduled that interview for the following week. At 9:30, I checked my phone for the first time since the ceremony began. I had 47 notifications. The first was from Forbes. They had posted a photo to their Instagram account an hour earlier, me and Governor Walsh on stage, him handing me the trophy, both of us smiling. The caption read, "Governor Walsh presents the Under 30 CEO Award to Doris Hinton of Meridian Technologies." The 28-year-old founder started her now $150 company in her parents' garage. Full coverage tomorrow. #Young entrepreneurs. #women in tech. #governors award. The post already had over 100,000 likes. The comments were filled with congratulations and admiration. Several people had tagged my company's account. Tech publications were sharing the photo. The engagement was extraordinary. Forbes' social media team had clearly promoted it heavily, and the story of a garage startup hitting $150 million was exactly the kind of narrative that resonated online. And then there were the texts. The first was from my college roommate. "OMG, I just saw you on Forbes. Why didn't you tell me? You look amazing." Then from my former professor. "Congratulations. Saw the governor's award announcement. So proud of you." Then from my cousin. "Just saw your photo with the governor. Belle's wedding photos can't compete with that LOL." I scrolled further. My aunt had texted, "Wow, Doris, your mother just told me about the award. Why weren't we invited?" Then came the messages I'd been waiting for. My mother. "Doris, honey. Someone just showed me a Forbes post with you and the governor. What is this? Why didn't you tell us?" My father. "Sweetheart, I'm seeing photos of you at some awards ceremony. I'm so confused. Please call me." And finally, Belle. "What the Doris people at my wedding are looking at their phones and congratulating me on my sister's award." What award? What is going on? I slipped the phone back into my clutch without responding to any of them. The Wall Street Journal reporter found me again near the end of the evening. "Miss Hinton, I'd love to include some personal background in the piece. Can you tell me about your family?" "My father owns a hardware store," I said. "My mother is a retired teacher. They taught me that honest work is something to be proud of, not ashamed of." The reporter scribbled notes. "And they were here tonight to support you." "Unfortunately, no," I said. "They had another family commitment." It wasn't exactly a lie. I stayed until the very end of the reception, networking and accepting congratulations. By the time I got home, it was nearly midnight. My phone had been on silent all evening, and when I finally checked it, I had 147 unread notifications. The screen was filled with texts, missed calls, and social media alerts. Forbes had published a full article with multiple photos from the ceremony. The headline read, "From Garage Startup to $150 million, Success Meet, the 28-year-old CEO, Revolutionizing Logistics." The article included the photo of me and Governor Walsh that would become iconic, him handing me the crystal trophy, both of us backlit by the chandelier, my sapphire gown catching the light. Within hours, that photo had been shared across every major business publication and news outlet in the country. By morning, it had been picked up by national media. The call started at 7:00 a.m. My mother was crying. "Doris, why didn't you tell us? We would have been there. Your father is heartbroken that he missed it." "You were at Belle's wedding," I said calmly. "That was the family priority, remember? You should have said something. We didn't know about the award." "You didn't ask," I pointed out. "You assumed I had nothing important happening that day." "That's not fair. You thought what, Mom? That my work wasn't as important as Belle's society wedding? You were right there when she uninvited me. You told me to be understanding." So I was understanding. I understood that my accomplishments didn't matter to this family as much as impressing the Whitmores. She was silent for a long moment. "Doris, how was the wedding?" I asked. "It was beautiful," she said quietly, but everyone kept looking at their phones. Belle was furious. People were congratulating her on your achievement instead of focusing on her day. Good. The word hung in the air between us, unspoken but understood. "Several of the guests asked why you weren't there," Mom continued, her voice strained. "Important people, Doris. A state senator. CEOs. They'd all seen the Forbes post and wanted to know why the bride's accomplished sister was receiving a gubernatorial award instead of attending the wedding." "What did Belle tell them?" "She said you were ill, but then someone mentioned seeing photos of you in that beautiful gown looking perfectly healthy. She looked like she wanted to sink into the floor." "Of course she did." "Preston's mother was particularly interested." Mom went on. "She pulled me aside and asked pointed questions about why we kept your success so quiet. I didn't know what to say." I could picture it perfectly. Constance Whitmore's sharp eyes, her calculating expression as she reassessed the family she had deemed beneath her standards. The irony was almost poetic. "Your father wants to talk to you," Mom said. "He's been up all night looking at the photos online. He printed out the one of you and the governor and put it on the refrigerator." My throat tightened. "I have to go, Mom," I said. "I have interviews scheduled all morning." I have to go." I hung up. Belle called next. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. Finally, on the fifth attempt, I answered. "How could you do this to me?" she shouted before I even said hello. "You ruined my wedding." "I didn't do anything to you, Belle. I attended an award ceremony I was invited to months ago. You did this on purpose. You scheduled it for my wedding day to embarrass me. Actually, the governor's office scheduled it. I had no control over the date, and even if I did, why would it matter? You made it very clear you didn't want me at your wedding." "That's not what I said." "That is exactly what you said. You told me I would embarrass you in front of Preston's family because I run some little startup nobody's heard of, remember?" She was crying now. "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. You were ashamed of me, ashamed of Dad, ashamed of our whole family because we weren't sophisticated enough for the Whitmores. Well, guess what? While you were walking down the aisle at some country club, the governor of our state was publicly praising the daughter of a hardware store owner. Forbes published a feature about me. The Wall Street Journal wants an interview. And none of it has anything to do with you." Preston's mother saw the Forbes post. Belle sobbed. She asked why my sister wasn't at the wedding. I had to tell her you were sick. Now she thinks I lied to her. That's your problem, not mine. "Doris, please, can we just talk about this?" "We did talk about it. 3 weeks ago. You told me not to come to your wedding. I respected your wishes. What more do you want from me?" There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing shaky and uneven. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," she whispered. "But it is like this. You made a choice about what mattered more, impressing Preston's family or having your sister there. You chose. Now you have to live with that choice." "Everyone's talking about you," she said. "The whole reception people kept pulling out their phones. Preston's father asked if we'd invited you and why you weren't there. One of his business partners wanted an introduction to you for some potential collaboration. It was supposed to be my day." "It was your day, Belle. I was across the state at a completely different event. I didn't crash your wedding. I didn't send out announcements. I didn't do anything except accept an award I earned. If people chose to pay attention to that instead of your ceremony, maybe that says something about the choices you made." I hung up. The media attention continued for weeks. Forbes featured me in their 30 under 30 list. The Wall Street Journal published a lengthy profile. I was invited to speak at conferences and panels. Investors were calling daily. Meridian Technologies' valuation increased by 30% in a single month, largely due to the publicity. My parents eventually stopped trying to guilt me into reconciling with Belle. I think they finally understood what had happened, though they were too uncomfortable to admit it directly. My father sent a text that said simply, "I've always been proud of you. I'm sorry if I didn't show it enough." I went to visit him at the hardware store one Saturday morning. He was organizing paint supplies when I walked in. "There's my famous daughter," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Governor Walsh mentioned you in his speech," I told him. "He said small business owners like you are the foundation of the American economy." My father's eyes got misty. "He said that." He meant it too. He asked about the store, about how you helped me get started. He was genuinely interested. We spent the afternoon together just talking. It felt like healing. "Your sister called me," he eventually said. "Wanted to know if I was angry with her." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I loved her. But I also told her what she said about this family wasn't okay." "Your mother and I worked hard to give you girls everything we could," he said. "I'm not ashamed of what I do, and neither of you should be either." I squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Dad." 6 months passed before Belle reached out again. She sent a text. "Can we meet for coffee?" I almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at a cafe downtown Neutral Territory. She looked tired, older somehow. Marriage to Preston clearly wasn't the fairy tale she had imagined. "Thank you for coming," she said. I stirred my coffee and waited. "I owe you an apology," Belle continued. "What I said about your company, about Dad, about all of it, I was wrong. I got so caught up in trying to impress Preston's family that I lost sight of what actually matters." "And what changed your mind?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "Preston's mother. After the wedding, she kept making these comments about our family. Nothing I did was ever good enough. She criticized the way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the way I decorated our apartment. And Preston just let her. He never stood up for me." I'm sorry, I said, and I genuinely meant it. That sounds awful. The worst part, she whispered, was realizing that I treated you and Dad the same way she was treating me. I was so ashamed of where I came from that I tried to erase it, and I hurt the people who actually loved me in the process. I took a sip of coffee. Are you telling me this because you genuinely understand what you did wrong, or because things didn't work out the way you planned? Both, probably, she admitted. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know. I see it now. I see how incredible you are, how much you've accomplished, and I'm sorry I couldn't see it before. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't absolve her completely. Some wounds take time to heal, but I appreciated her honesty. As we were leaving, she asked, "Do you think Dad would let me work at the hardware store for a while, just part-time? I want to remember what it was like before I got so caught up in appearances." "You should ask him yourself," I said, "but I think he'd like that." The following week, I saw a photo of Belle on social media. She was wearing jeans and a work shirt with Greenfield hardware embroidered on the pocket, helping a customer select lumber. The caption read, "Back to basics, remembering what matters." Preston filed for divorce 8 months after the wedding. Apparently, his family's empire wasn't quite as stable as they pretended, and they needed a daughter-in-law who could bring more financial connections to the table. The Whitmores were facing business troubles that required strategic alliances, and Belle's family couldn't provide what they needed. She wasn't enough for them either. A year after the governor's award, Meridian Technologies was acquired by a major tech conglomerate for $400 million. I stayed on as CEO and negotiated positions for my entire executive team. We expanded to 12 states and hired over 1,000 employees. Forbes did a follow-up feature titled, "The CEO, Who Started in a Garage 1 Year Later." The article included a photo of me and my father standing in front of Greenfield Hardware, both of us smiling. My mother framed that photo and hung it in their living room right next to Belle's wedding portrait. Some people might say I was petty for not telling my family about the governor's award. Maybe they're right. But I learned something important that day. You teach people how to treat you. For years, I'd accepted being underestimated, overlooked, treated as less important. That night at the state capitol, holding that crystal trophy while cameras flashed, I decided I was done accepting that treatment. I built my company. I earned my success. I stood on that stage because of my work, not because of who I knew or what family I married into. And if that coincided with my sister's wedding, well, as she herself had told me, sometimes you have to make compromises for what's truly important. I just decided what was important to me. The trophy sits on my desk now, catching the afternoon light through the windows of my corner office. Sometimes when I'm having a difficult day, I look at it and remember. I belong in every room I choose to enter, not because someone granted me permission, but because I earned my place.